What if 80% of your results come from just 20% of your efforts? What if most of what you do every day is actually waste and only a small fraction of your actions create real value? This isn't motivation talk, it's mathematics. It's called the Pareto Principle, or the 80-20 rule, and it's one of the most powerful concepts you'll ever learn. Understanding and applying this principle means you can accomplish more by doing less, not by working harder, but by working smarter. Today, you're going to learn exactly how the 80-20 rule works, why most people waste their energy on the wrong things, and how to focus on the vital few activities that create extraordinary results. The 80-20 rule states that roughly 80% of results come from 20% of causes. This principle was discovered by Italian economist Wilfredo Pareto in 1896 when he noticed that 80% of the land in Italy was owned by 20% of the population. He then observed this pattern everywhere. 80% of peas in his garden came from 20% of the pods. 80% of wealth is owned by 20% of people. 80% of sales come from 20% of customers. Since then, the Pareto Principle has been found in almost every area of life. 80% of your results come from 20% of your efforts. 80% of your happiness comes from 20% of your relationships. 80% of your productivity comes from 20% of your time. 80% of complaints come from 20% of customers. 80% of your learning comes from 20% of the content. The numbers aren't always exactly 80-20. Sometimes it's 90-10 or 70-30. The exact ratio doesn't matter. What matters is this: a small number of inputs create the majority of outputs. Most of what you do doesn't matter much. A few things matter enormously. And most people spend their entire lives focused on the trivial many instead of the vital few. Understanding this distinction changes everything. Here's why this principle is so powerful. It reveals that most effort is wasted. Think about your typical workday. You do dozens of tasks, but only 2 to 3 of those tasks actually move your goals forward significantly. The rest, busy work, noise, activity that creates minimal value. The 80-20 rule exposes this truth and forces you to ask uncomfortable questions. Which 20% of my activities produce 80% of my results? Which 20% of my clients generate 80% of my revenue? Which 20% of my relationships bring 80% of my happiness? Which 20% of my time creates 80% of my value? When you identify these high-leverage activities, you can do more of them, multiply results, eliminate or minimize the 80% that produces little value, reclaim time. This is how you accomplish more by doing less. Not by working longer hours, not by being busier, but by focusing intensely on what actually matters and ruthlessly eliminating what doesn't. The 80-20 rule isn't about efficiency, it's about effectiveness. Efficiency is doing things right. Effectiveness is doing the right things. Most people spend their lives becoming more efficient at doing the wrong things. The 80-20 rule helps you identify and focus on the right things. Let's see how this principle shows up in various contexts. Work and productivity. 80% of your results come from 20% of your tasks. Identify your highest value tasks and do those first. Eliminate, delegate, or automate the rest. Business and sales. 80% of revenue comes from 20% of customers. Focus on serving and retaining your best clients. Fire or deprioritize demanding low-value customers. 80% of sales come from 20% of your products. Double down on your best offerings. Cut or minimize underperformers. Learning and skill development. 80% of your knowledge comes from 20% of the content. Focus on core principles and high-value information. Skip the rest. 80% of language usage comes from 20% of the vocabulary. Learn the most common words first. You can communicate effectively without knowing every word. Relationships. 80% of your happiness and support come from 20% of your relationships. Invest deeply in these relationships. Set boundaries with energy-draining people. health and fitness. 80% of health benefits come from 20% of habits. Sleep, basic exercise, and avoiding junk food create most health results. You don't need complex optimization. Time management. 80% of your productive output happens in 20% of your time. Identify your peak productivity hours and protect them fiercely. The pattern is everywhere. Once you start looking, you'll see it in every area of your life. Understanding the principle is one thing, applying it is another. Here's your step-by-step process. Step 1. Track your activities. For 1 week, track how you spend your time and what results you get. Write down every significant activity and the outcome it produced. Step 2. Analyze the data. Look for patterns. Which activities produced the most value? Which produced little or no value? Be honest. Most people are shocked to discover how much time they waste on low-value activities. Step 3. Identify your vital 20. Ask, if I could only do 20% of what I currently do, which activities would I keep? These are your high-leverage activities. Everything else is negotiable. Step 4. Eliminate, delegate, or automate the 80%. You have 3 options for low-value activities. Eliminate, stop doing them entirely. Many tasks don't need to be done at all. Delegate, give them to someone else for whom they're higher value or lower cost. Automate, use technology or systems to handle them without your involvement. Step 5. Double down on the 20%. Now that you've freed up time, invest it in your high-leverage activities. If 20% of your effort creates 80% of results, imagine what happens when you do more of that 20%. Step 6. Review regularly. The 80-20 applies to different things at different times. What's high leverage today may not be in 6 months. Review quarterly. What's my current vital 20%? This process isn't easy. It requires brutal honesty and the willingness to cut activities you've invested time in. But the payoff is extraordinary. More results with less effort.
The 80-20 rule is counterintuitive because we're taught that effort equals results. Work harder, achieve more. Do more, get more. But the 80-20 rule reveals a different truth. Most effort produces minimal results. Only a small fraction of effort produces exceptional results. The secret isn't working harder. It's identifying the vital few activities that create the most value and focusing on them obsessively. This requires courage because it means saying no to most things, letting go of activities you've invested time in, disappointing people who want your time and energy. But it also creates freedom to focus, freedom to excel, freedom to achieve more by doing less. Starting today, ask yourself, what's my 20%? What activities, relationships, and habits create most of my results and happiness? Then ruthlessly protect that 20%. Cut, delegate, or automate everything else. Do less, focus more, achieve exponentially better results. That's the power of the 80-20 rule.